Hello, everyone. I'm seated in Conference Room A at the Municipal Center, and it's that time of year again where the candidates have stepped forward and thrown their hat into the ring for open seats in town. And I'm here to interview one of the candidates. Her name is Jennifer Thomas, and she is the chair of the Select Board. Welcome.
Thank you.
So these Meet the Candidate programs, I should take a moment to pause and say these programs actually were created back in the day by Rick Schultz, who we lost recently. And so I've picked up the mantle and carried it forward. The programs aren't really supposed to be heavy political. They're more of a get-to-know-you type of program because there may be people out there that are familiar with your views and maybe people that have no idea. So hopefully we can introduce you to those that are less familiar and answer some questions about politics in town. And having said that, we'll just get started underway. So you're healthy, I assume. You look healthy. Everything's good.
Yeah, we're just like a lot of people in town. We're fortunate that my family's healthy at this time, but we are very cautious and don't go out much and keep to ourselves. But at this time, we are healthy. Thank you.
Good, good. All right, so we'll get started with a casual question. Have you always been interested in politics, or is it something that caught your interest later in life?
Um, I find that such an interesting question because I would say that I'm not interested in politics at all. I find it's a necessary piece of serving the community, but I don't like the term politics. I don't find myself as a politician. I think politics brings a lot of counterproductive components to trying to serve the local community. I worked for the state of Washington for a long time, first as a park ranger and then as a recreation forester. So I worked in a government agency. So I learned firsthand how the policies made up top trickled down and affect the work of the people down below, and also how it shaped people's lives. There was never enough money to do everything we needed to do, and we always had to come up with creative solutions. So for me, it's just about helping. Things like this, public speaking. You know, a lot of politicians can get up and give a speech at the drop of a hat. Not me. Very difficult for me. It's very challenging, but I understand it's part of the job. So we have to do things we're uncomfortable with. So I'd rather just do the work and not necessarily talk about it. So that's where I come from.
All right. So what strategies have you adopted while adjusting to the new normal of the COVID-19 crisis? What experiences have you learned during this time that you might be able to adapt as your role as a member of the Select Board?
Yeah, I think there are many things. First, caution and patience. I think that, we really don't know how long this is going to last. I know that we're starting to reopen, but people still need to be cautious about going out and interacting with other people. And there's still so many unanswered questions. We don't know if it's going to spike again. We don't know if we're over the toughest point, and we don't know if it's going to come back in the fall. So there's so much uncertainty right now that I think that people need to be patient. And that patience goes with answering like budget questions and what do we do down the road and how do we handle these things. We can only do what we can do with the information we have right now. So many things are changing right now. So some questions are going to go unanswered for a while until we are able to get that information. We've had tough budget cycles before, but we get through them. And times are really tough right now, but I think we'll get through it, which brings me to the other strategies of compassion and empathy. I mean, this isn't just a tough time economically for people. It's extremely stressful for most people. And I worry constantly about my friends and my family. I have aging parents and in-laws. And I spend a lot of time at the senior center, so I see their faces a lot. And I worry about them. They're at high risk. So we need to respond to our citizens with compassion and empathy as well.
Do you have your mask handy right nearby so we can see?
I do. As we said, as like we were chatting beforehand, we really don't go out much, so I don't use a mask much. I do have some disposables in the car if I forget it, but for the most part, I wear this more like a buff, a survivor buff
Oh, yeah,
as a
okay.
bandana, because it's really we don't, we weren't prepared for it like most people. So I haven't really purchased or made one to match my personality, I guess, as some people have done already. But I'm behind the curve. I'm behind the curve on that. So yes.
So, as we emerge from the COVID crisis, do you think that, do you have any insight or do you have any feeling what the future holds in store for Grafton's economy?
Yeah. I'm really optimistic, as I am in most things. That's kind of how I go through life. I've just been so impressed with our local businesses. They really have come together to support each other, and they've come up with really creative ways to still do business in this time of difficulty. They're bringing in new and different products that help the community, and they've really had to work on altering the way they do business, whether it's curbside pickup or personal shopping and those types of things. So I believe after the crisis, they're going to continue to support each other. But the town also needs to support them. So, for example, restaurants now, as they're trying to reopen, they're really trying to figure out that social distancing in the space. And a lot of them may want to have more outdoor space. So I really feel like we need to facilitate and help them in that transition plan to be able to use more outdoor space and not stand in their way. It's going to take a long time for our small businesses to recover. It's going to be extremely difficult, especially for some of our businesses that are very low on the reopen list, like our bars and our gyms. So we really have to figure out how to help them the best way we can. But during this crisis, the work on economic development has continued. The town continues to lay the groundwork for new companies and new businesses. We've done very many visioning studies that have been funded by grants, and we've been using those to determine the best uses of sites. Examples are North Grafton Transit Village, the Bullock Plaza, and our DPW site, which will soon become vacant. We've asked voters to change zoning bylaws to encourage development. Just this week, I was on 2 interviews with developers for 8 Pine. Now, 8 Pine comes out of that North Grafton Transit Village, and it's the old state hospital. And so the idea came about in that visioning process that we would like to see some mixed use there. We want to see some commercial space. We want to see some apartments because Grafton really does not have very many apartments. So we had interviews this week to close on selling that property to a developer that can provide those things. I know it's campaign season, and in campaign season, everybody says economic development. We need more economic development, and I'm going to bring you more economic development. That's true. It is needed, and we are constantly working on it. There's development team meetings, the visioning exercises, changing bylaws, the Mass Work grant up on Route 30. There's the mass development property on Route 30 we're trying to sell. We're still working on Fisherville Mill. Grafton Science Park is ready for development. The front part of Wyman Gordon is ready. So we're ready. We're ready for businesses to come to town. So all of this groundwork has been done. But it has to make economic sense for them to come here. I know a lot of times people ask me, why don't we have a fast food restaurant in town besides Dunkin' Donuts? Well, we did. We had Burger King, but they didn't last. They couldn't make it because we have to support those businesses coming to town. So if a company doesn't feel like they're going to make money here, they're not going to come here. So we have to figure out ways to encourage them to come. And then there's the businesses with employees, like if we want to get a biotech company or those sort of things. Those businesses look for vibrant communities. They look for communities that have good schools, good restaurants, good shopping. They look for communities with good amenities so that their employees have a great place to live and work. So we still have to continue working on those things. And they're not directly connected to economic development, but they're extremely important. So I think we're going to be okay. I think it's going to be a long process, just like it's going to be in the rest of the country. But the people in Grafton support each other. I mean, we've been trying to support our small businesses during this time as it is. So as we come out of this COVID time, I really feel like the people in Grafton will continue to support their small businesses.
When you talk to people in town, what are 2 major concerns that voters have expressed to you, and how did you respond to their concerns?
All right. Yeah. Well, right now, certainly the biggest concerns I'm getting because of where we are close to town meeting are the override and marijuana. So first with the override, I'm really conflicted about the override. I always have been, um, because I do believe it's our moral obligation to educate our children, but I also feel strongly about balance, and we also have to balance that with the rest of the community. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. People are losing their jobs. Our small businesses are struggling. And if I knew in March and April what I know now, I would not have agreed to an override this spring. The original plan was to ask in October. When we had a meeting on March 5th, Dr. Cummings said that fiscal year 21 is kind of like stepping on a Lego. It's going to hurt. But fiscal years 22 and 23 are going to be like falling down the stairs. So those are the critical years, fiscal years 22 and 23. We should have waited. Additionally, voters are concerned about their health. They may not come to town meeting to have their voice heard. They can vote by mail, but it's a process. It's not that easy, and some people may be confused by the process. So we're asking to significantly raise people's taxes over the next 5 years. And I just hope that people are able to get their voice heard. It's very concerning to me. So I'm a no on the override for this spring. I want people to figure out what their life's going to be like post-COVID. And then I think we need to tackle fiscal years 22 and 23 in the fall. So marijuana is another big concern. A lot of people contact me about marijuana. There is on the town meeting warrant, there's going to be a citizens petition that raises the number of marijuana shop licenses that we allow in town. So currently it's 20% of all our off-premises liquor licenses, and the warrant article will raise it to 50%, which would go from 2 to 3. Although that 3, it could potentially be 5 if the other liquor licenses are filled in town, but that's probably not likely because, again, we already have 6, so a town can only support so many liquor licenses in terms of the economy. So the select board voted against putting it on the warrant 3-2, and I was part of that 3. But again, now there's a citizens petition. Pardon me. So I'm not against marijuana. I've actually signed and supported the other host agreements that have come to town. I just have a more conservative approach. I want to keep the number low, and I want to keep it at the zoning at light, office light industrial, and industrial. We have 2 shops that are working towards opening this summer. So I want to see how they do. I want to see what impacts they have to our community, what kind of revenue they bring in, if there's any increased police needed, whatever the impacts are. We really don't know because we don't have any open. So once we have some open and we have better information, then I think it's a better time to decide whether or not we want to add more. So wrapped in those concerns is the concern of town meeting, because we're going to make a lot of very important decisions at town meeting. So people are concerned about these things, but they're also concerned that they're not going to be able to participate because of health and safety concerns. And that's too bad. So I would like to postpone town meeting a little bit longer. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but if not, we need to either do it outside or figure out another system to keep people as safe as possible.
Okay. So do you do you see the whole budget number process in your head? And I mean, you must, right? There must be something that.
Yeah. Excuse me. The allergies. You know, we have this COVID, but we also have allergies right now, and so I have a terrible cough. So I apologize.
No apologies necessary, because I go through the same thing. I have seasonal allergies. One of my medications produces a dry cough. I get dirty looks when I go.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot and therefore coughing. I do spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about the budget, but actually right now, that's not what keeps me up at night. You know, I'm more concerned about the safety of our citizens and our employees. I want to make sure that everybody is safe. So the budget is really important, and again, I do think about it, but it's only one aspect of the job. But you know, I have been on the board for 6 years. That's a long time. So I've been a part of a lot of budget cycles. So I can tell you for sure that you can't create more money by moving things around on a spreadsheet. It's definitely more complicated than that. So as people know, we're limited on how much we can raise in taxes due to Proposition 2.5. Excuse me. State aid has dropped significantly since my time on the board, and we must continue to lobby our representatives for additional aid. So our options are limited. We need to either increase revenue, which is either by an override or more economic development, or we need to reduce our budget. And we go through this process every year. But our job is to manage it. We need to prioritize where that money goes. And there's no doubt about it. We're in a very difficult budget season. But experience tells me that we need to stay calm, work through it, and make fact-based decisions. So I guess that's more of an answer than you were looking for, but I have lots on this because I've been around a long time. So
well, it kind of ties into the other part of the question that I was going to ask you, and the question was, do you have insights that would help you solve future budget dilemmas? But when you said you were on the board for 6 years, it made me think. Our budget discussions, and this is as somebody who struggles with the idea of town budget. And if the select board had a camera and could watch me at home, they'd see my eyes roll in the back of my head. So when you all get together and review the budget, is it a year-to-year process, or do you think there are benefits to looking 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, or is that just too far and you can't make it work? Which one is more reality, I guess?
Well, I think it's a mix. I think you try to do both. I mean, there is definitely value in planning, and you try to look at projections far out. But the projections when we did the first override were to keep a 6% state aid increase every year. Well, we got 1%. So, that greatly made our numbers greatly different, but we still managed to make that override last for 6 years, not 5, based on the other things we did with the budget. So there is definite value in planning, but you have to be flexible, and year to year is different. And I think you keep the same themes, you keep the same priorities. We certainly, the select board is more of a big picture gig, so we look at the big picture and where do we want the town going in general. And so yes, there definitely is value to planning, but I think 10 years out, except for the really big picture master planning, it really loses its value the further we go out. Yeah, but we, as long as I've been on the board, we have had consistent priorities. So I can go into that if you want, unless you have a different question.
No, I wasn't looking for you to go into nuts and bolts because, again, my eyes would roll in the back of my head. Earlier I asked you if you'd learned anything under quarantine that you could bring the experience to your work on the select board. So I wanted to flip it around a little bit. And what have your experiences on the select board taught you that you may have been able to use at home?
That one's tricky. I mean, for sure, we're in a house, I have a great family, great kids, great husband, great pets, but, we're stuck together like everybody else. And so respecting other people's opinions is very important. Cooperation, collaboration, getting along, sharing resources, all of that stuff is I think parts that I use on the select board that we also use at home. Yeah.
All right. Do your kids have any strong opinions one way or the other about your serving in town government?
Yeah. So when I first ran, my kids were in 3rd, 4th, and 6th grade. So they were little. But my husband and I have always volunteered, either in the schools or we both coached a lot. I was a den leader for Scouts for a long time. So they definitely understand the importance of contributing to the community. But that being said, I have missed many sporting events, many school programs. I mean, I'm getting ready for a meeting. Oh, you have another meeting tonight? Yeah, I have another meeting tonight, because it's not just the select board meetings. I mean, when you're a member of the select board, you're also a member of a lot of other committees. And I am out a lot at night, and I'm also very busy during the day. Again, I sit on interviews for the developer, like I talked about earlier. We've had many meetings about how to have Zoom work on TV, and there's so many things, or the cable, the franchise agreement. There's so many things, meetings during the day. So it's a lot more work than people may realize, because if you're only seeing the meetings, a couple times a month. So my kids, but they understand. I mean, they understand why I do it. They understand that we make very important decisions that affect the entire town. But my kids also, they grew up with responsive classroom, right? Oh, I didn't mention that my kids now I have a senior, so it's very tough this time of year. I have a sophomore who should be learning how to drive, who cannot. And I have a freshman who plays so many sports I can't even count that have been canceled this spring. So, now that they're all in high school, a little different perspective, but they all grew up with the responsive classroom through our school district. And so they know what bullying is, they know what bystanding is, and they see social media a lot because they're old enough to be on social media. So we have to have a lot of conversations about responsible social media use. So that part of this is really hard for my kids, because I mean, the political social media in Grafton is rough. It is really rough, and it hurts them a lot. So we have to have conversations about that. So they really don't like that part.
My cousin's husband is a member of the select board in Holliston, and I got news for you. It's the same everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Yeah. We should be able to respect people's opinions and make decisions collaboratively, and not be nasty and unprofessional.
So I know that you're a big supporter of the Super Park project, and what are the benefits, in your opinion, of the Super Park? But having asked that, are there any perhaps unforeseen drawbacks or problems that you worry about?
Sure. There's a lot of confusion around the Super Park. There's also a lot of confusion around the Community Preservation Act, which is going to be the primary funding source for the Super Park. So to start, the Community Preservation Act was adopted by Grafton close to 20 years ago now, so a long time. And it's a 1.5% surcharge on your property taxes, and it's matched in some percentage by the state. That comes from the registries of deeds. And the spirit of the Community Preservation Act is to fund projects that the town otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So it kind of gets you the whipped cream. There's a lot of projects in towns all across the Commonwealth that the towns just cannot do. They cannot afford. And that's one way that the Community Preservation Act helps those towns. So in Grafton, Ecklaw Landing was our first one. Mill Villages Park, South Grafton Community House, One Grafton Common. We've purchased a lot of land, including Pell Farms, the Robinson property near Silver Lake, Hassanamset Woods. So CPA money can be used for affordable housing, historic restoration, open space, and recreation, and that's it. It cannot be used for schools or other operational expenses. So there will not be an increase in your taxes if we're able to fund the Super Park. But if the park is not funded, that money just sits in an account until another qualifying project comes along that is vetted through CPC for the money to be used for. So you spend it on a Super Park or you don't, there's going to be no impact to your taxes. You're not going to get money back if we don't spend the money. And if we do spend the money, you're not going to see an increase. So the timing, I know, is tricky for some people because, again, we're in a pandemic, but the construction on the library is continuing and the projects are very closely intertwined. So it's kind of now we got to get it done because there's certain coordinations that have to happen. And the Rec Commission is doing a great job. They are driving this project. I have not driven this project in a long time, and they're doing a great job getting the information out there. And there's a lot of grants that they'll be able to apply for, but the grant cycle requires them to have funding now, and then the grants reimburse them. So that's also part of the timing. And again, I know it seems weird to spend money, if we're going through a pandemic, but this is money that's there if we spend it or not. And that money gets added into the community. It gets added into the local economy. So when so many people are out of work, it will provide jobs for other people. It just is, that's what CPA funds do, is they bring projects to town, and it gives a little boost to the economy. So another reason I've been very supportive of it, it's an inclusive place. It's a place that people of all ages and abilities can use together. And we don't have anything like that in Grafton. I know some people, the counter argument is that, we should improve other parks, but the equipment needed for kids with mobility issues or other issues is very different and very expensive than what we have there already. So maybe you pay for 1 or 2 new ADA compliant structures at these places, but then you have a kid that needs the equipment and they have to go to all these different places to experience those different structures instead of going to a centralized location. So as I mentioned earlier, I have a background in outdoor recreation. I worked as a park ranger and a restoration forester. And so I see a ton of value in providing outdoor recreational opportunities. It's just good for people. It's good for your quality of life. It's good for the community. It's good for the individuals. I see a lot of value in providing those recreational spaces. Now, in terms of drawbacks, I know people are saying that the money could be better spent providing rental assistance, but the Affordable Housing Trust has that covered. They have a lot of CPC money over the years, and they are much better suited to manage a rental assistance project. So that is not a concern to me. My biggest concern about it is I do worry about increased congestion on the Common, because the library will bring more people. A park will bring more people. We did recently do a lot of improvements to the pedestrian situation up there to make it safer for pedestrians. So I'm glad that was done, if there is increased congestion. So any drawback, that personally is my biggest concern, is just adding more stuff in the center of town. But then, the DPW, I mentioned slightly earlier under economic development, the old DPW site we would like to see developed too, with housing and commercial. So it all ties in together. So maybe people park there and walk down to the park, or it just all gets tied in together. I think it would be a great asset for people coming to the library, and then they're able to spend some time outside. It's just, I know there's a lot of people that are against it, but I just think it would improve our community.
Okay. So after we abandoned the Zoom concept of holding meetings for town government, and the select board moves back into this room, conference room A, what might be the possible impacts on voter attendance? Do you think people will go back to the way things used to be, or do you think there'll be an increased interest in attending the meetings and participating?
Well, that's the goal, right? That's what we always want. We always want more participation. Love to see more people come. I'd love to see more people vote. I'd love to see more people go to town meeting. So I hope when we move back to conference room A, people will feel safe and they'll come. Maybe now we've developed a lot of new ways to handle things, especially with this Zoom. So right now we do have a remote participation for members, and it's a call-in, but maybe now we can do video conferencing better, and we can get that on the air too. So I do feel like there could be some improvements when we go back to conference room A. If people don't feel safe coming, we can continue to take public comment through email and read those at the meetings. But I really do hope that attendance will I know we've had more attendance on Zoom because people can stay home, but I do hope people come and participate, because it is really important to participate in your local government. Pardon me. Because I want people to listen for themselves. There's definitely value to hearing information firsthand and not relying on secondhand information that's been interpreted for you. So I hope people come and listen to themselves. And if they don't come, I hope they watch it on Grafton Cable TV. A plug for Grafton Cable TV.
That's the plan. All right, Jen. You have any closing statements, closing thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I just, I've served this community for a long time in the role and in my role on the select board, and I really want to continue to do so. I feel like my experience is very valuable, especially in a time right now where stability is needed. If you do the math, I have more experience than all other board members combined at this point in time by quite a bit. So I hope to continue to serve the community, but that's how democracy works, right? You gotta go with what you feel. So I appreciate everybody's vote, and I appreciate all the support I've had over the years. So thank you.
My guest has been the chairperson of the Grafton Select Board, who is a candidate for re-election, and I want to thank her for taking part in our conversation today. My name is Bob DeToma for Grafton Community Television. For everyone behind the scenes at Grafton Community Television, thank you for watching.